Hello, my dear students. I hope that you all are fine at home and also enjoying your days by learning all the classes. Okay, so let me start with the chapter 2. It's already almost we have completed. So in this video, we will continue the same lesson, that is chapter 2, reproduction in flowering plants. So in this today we shall discuss about the characteristic features of entomophily. That means the flowers which are pollinated by the insects. Okay, or else we can also say that this category comes under the biotic agents. Then also next we will understand about the fertilization part, where we will first understand how that interaction between a pollen and pistil takes place. First of all, let me revise some of the topics what we have learned. So already we have understood that how the development of male gametophyte occurs, female gametophyte occurs. Then also we have understood kinds of pollination. So as these two gametes are also immotile, that or it is immovable, so these gametes has to be brought together by mechanism called as pollination. So that there are two kinds of pollination are there, that is self-pollination and cross-pollination. Under self-pollination there are two categories, which is autogamy and geitonogamy. So autogamy occurs within the same flower, the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of same flower, whereas in the geitonogamy, transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of two flowers of the same plant. Okay, so even you may think that why it is considered as a self-pollination, why not a cross-pollination? Because it occurs between two flowers. But here genetically they are similar, their genetic makeup is similar, so it is known as self-pollination. And to achieve this self-pollination, plants have to develop some mechanism, like they have to, this anther and stigma has to mature at the same time, so that pollination mechanism can be carried out in a coordinated manner. Then as well as anther and stigma must lie close to each other. That also favors the self-pollination. So that's why in some of the plants, like viola and camelina, what is that flower which produces the two types of flowers, Chasmogamous, and it produces this one oxalis, right? So it produces two kinds of flowers, that is Chasmogamous and Clistogamous flowers. In Chasmogamous flowers, it will be remain open, okay, and Clistogamous flowers, they'll never open at all. So the both anther and stigma both will lie very close to each other and never exposes to outside. So they always follows the self-pollination. So this is one adaptation for the plants to follow the self-pollination. Then about the cross-pollination, this cross-pollination, what is cross-pollination? It's between the two flowers of same species but of different plant. Then what are the outbreeding devices, what are the factors, or what are the favoring mechanism which encourages the cross-pollination? That is, we have understood what is dichogamy, hercogamy, heterostyle, then self-incompatibility, then unisexuality. All those factors promotes the cross-pollination. So then we also understood what are the characteristic features of water pollinated flowers as well as wind pollinated flowers. What we call for water pollinated flowers as they are hydrophily. That phenomenon is called as hydrophily. Whereas in this one, if it is pollination is by wind, then we call it as anemophily. In this too also we learned some of the particular characteristic features of those kind of flowers. Now let us learn about the characteristic features of insect pollinated flowers. Insect, generally we call that branch of biology which deals with the study of insects, is called as, it is entomology. So that pollination is known as entomophily. So entomophily, what are the features, right? So before going to the features, let us understand what are the agents Okay, so what we have understood also in the previous class that what are the biotic as well as abiotic agents which helps for the pollination. So water and wind comes under the abiotic factor. Biotic agents, they can be many. Biotic agents are many of the biotic agents are there which helps for the pollination mechanism. As well as there are some kind of mammals also there, reptiles also there which favors the mechanism of pollination. So generally that is some of the insects like bees, butterflies, flies, beetles, wasps, ants. All these are some of the category of insects which helps for the pollination. Then if the birds are helping for the pollination, we call it as ornithophily. Then the mammals like lemurs, which comes under the primate group. Lemurs you might have seen with the dark and white color that will be having the black fur on their sides and white fur will be there on their central part of their body. Then reptiles like gecko lizard and garden lizard also helps for that. Then even rodents, some of the rats also that belong, rodents also helps for the pollination. Now remember that the animal pollinated flowers will always specifically adapted for their pollinations for a particular species, because only that particular species only can help for the pollination, no other species. So especially animal pollinated flowers are specifically adapted for the particular type of species. Okay, so these are the biotic agents. Okay, so among these, which is a dominant pollinating agents? Among these, bee is considered as one of the major biotic agent of pollination. Okay, so in which largest flowers always a large number of flowers always use biotic agents. Mainly insects will favor their pollination. Let us go see now what are the features of these insect pollinated flowers. These insect pollinated flowers, usually they'll be large. Okay, they'll be large, then then as well as they'll be colorful. Okay, why it is large? So that they can support the animal biotic agents. See, sometimes large insects or birds, whatever comes, they have to support their body. So usually they'll be large in size, the flowers. Then flowers will be very colorful, they'll be brightly colored, and usually the colors are more specifically for bees and all those, they will have some of the flowers which radiating type, like which is which can be seen in a very narrow spectrum, in the very narrow, on the very small wavelength also they can be seen. So that is for mainly for the bees. Now for the butterflies and all, their flowers, the flowers which are pollinated by the butterflies and all, they'll be brightly colored, maybe orange, red, all those flowers which can see even attracting colors, those mainly gets pollinated by the butterflies. That is a feature developed in that flowers to attract the butterflies. Then in some of the flowers this cannot be possible. The petals won't be brightly colored. But in case instead of that, some other floral parts will be, accessory whorls also will be colored in them. For example, mozanda. Mozanda you might have seen nowadays, very commonly can be seen in our surrounding. This mozanda is especially, mozanda is not actually the petals are colored. In mozanda, the parts which is colored, it is sepals. In mozanda, that colored part is not the petal, instead it is a sepal. Likewise in bougainvillea, kagadahu. Is it? So in bougainvillea also, which part of that will be brightly colored? That is bract. That bracteate you have studied in your first year. So in bougainvillea, that bract will be brightly colored to attract the insects. In one more example is euphorbia. In euphorbia, that leaf is colored. In the euphorbia plant, leaf will be brightly colored to attract the pollinating agents. Then one more thing in the case of jasmine and all, night blooming flowers, they will not be having bright color. Instead, they'll produce a odor, that they'll produce a pleasant smell which attracts the pollinating agents. So fragrant. So understood? Colorful. They'll be brightly colored. Petals are brightly colored. If not, petals are not brightly colored, other floral parts will be brightly colored. Then we'll go with the next point. We'll come to this point later. Flowers are small. Then inflorescence will be arranged in conspicuous. So what is that conspicuous? That means the flowers will be very small, but has to be visible. So that even though they're small, they're conspicuous. They are arranged in the form of conspicuous and they can be easily visible. Then let me tell about the fragrance. Okay, so fragrance, the plants, you know that, very particularly plants, jasmine, rose, all those insect pollinated flowers will be very good in fragrance. So that will attract the pollinating agents. Then one more example. This smell can be a good smell, or it can be it need not to be always a good smell. Even it may also attract the pollinating agents with a foul smell as well as. And in case of Rafflesia, what is Rafflesia? Rafflesia is one of the world's largest flower. See, this largest flower, Rafflesia, it attracts one category of bees. Okay, so these bumblebees, they get pollinated by the bumblebees. These bees will attract to this flower. To attract to this flower, this Rafflesia will produce a smell, which is like a rotten flesh. That smell will be like a rotten flesh. So we know that it's a giant flower and it smells like rotten flesh. So that is one adaptation found in the insect pollinated flowers. Got it? So let us go with the next topic. Okay, we'll continue the next features. Okay, now already I told you they are fragrant. Flowers are small. Inflorescence will be arranged in a conspicuous. That means they are clearly visible. So the flowers will be clustered into an inflorescence and forms a conspicuous. Okay, they can be seen easily. That is conspicuous. This feature can be seen mainly in the sunflower. Sunflower, their flowers will be very small. Even though they are small, they will be even from far distance also the pollinating agents can detect the flowers. Next, rich in nectar. So usually insect pollinated entomophilic flowers are mainly producing, they will be rich in nectar. They have the nectar glands. So it is like a giving rewards. So we have the policy, be thankful to others, right? So we follow that principles in our life. Somebody helps for us in our difficult time. We also in turn help them by in possible way, however it is possible. So likewise, these plants also having that gratitude towards the pollinating agents. So they'll produce the nectar. Okay, so there are three examples are there. What way the plants can give rewards to the pollinating agents? The rewards are in the form of, what are the rewards? They can give rewards in the form of nectar, and they can also give a safe place to lay their eggs. And there's one more mutualistic relationship between the moth and yucca plant. And one more example is, under that example 2 is ficus and wasp species. See, in this all we can understand that these are the insect pollinated flowers are providing rewards to the pollinating agents in one or other way. Let us understand the first one, how it helps by producing the nectars, or by producing nectar glands. So how it attracts that? So once the animal or biotic agents comes in contact with that anther or stigma, they will get that rewards. To harvest the rewards, they'll be visit again. So once that sits on that one flower, and when that flower visits on another flower, the pollen grains which will be stick on to their body will mechanically they'll be get transmitted to the other flower, which results in the pollination. So got clear about that? So once that rewards are provided to the pollinating agents, so for harvesting the rewards from the flower, the animal visitor comes in contact with these flowers, and what happens then? The body of the animal gets coated with this pollen grain, and when this animal which is coated with the pollen grain visits on another flower, which brings about pollination. Okay, this is about the rewards in insect pollinated flowers in the form of nectar. Then second, rewards. Some plants used to provide rewards in the form of giving a oviposition. Oviposition means give a position to lay their eggs. So mainly we can see in Amorphophallus. Amorphophallus is one of the tallest flowers. So just take down that. Okay, Amorphophallus. Amorphophallus is one of the tallest flower. Okay, so it has a tall in nature, so that these insects will come and lay their eggs on their base part. So what happens? So it is helps for their they gets pollinated. One way this Amorphophallus flower will get pollinated, and another, in return, the insects will get a place to lay their eggs. So what is the height of this Amorphophallus flower? You know, it is 6 feet in height. Amorphophallus flowers is one of the tallest flower, which has a height of 5 feet. Up to that much it can grow. Then another interesting feature. Okay, very interesting. And as well as you will learn in the more about this in the coming chapter. In I think in the ecology section we have this. So this relationship, we call it as mutualistic relationship. You know about the mutualism? Mutualism, and even you have studied about lichens. Lichens is a symbiotic relationship, right? So here is a mutualistic relationship. See, this plant and animal, already I told you once in the beginning, there will be these animal pollinated flowers will specifically adapted for a particular species. Likewise, this is insect pollinated flower species, but these both are so correlated that without one, the other we cannot exist. So coexistence, both will exist together. Without one, another cannot exist. So this Ecca plant and moth species. So what happens is here, in the Ecca plant, moth will come and lay their eggs inside. So they helps for their pollination. In one side, the insects helps for their moth helps for their pollination. They carry out the pollination. In turn, this Ecca plant, what happens? It gets pollinated. Then one other feature is that moth, when it lays its eggs on this Ecca plant, they starts to develop. Okay, and that developing larvae will feed on these seeds. Because how these seeds are produced? Because already they are pollinated, so they started to develop the seeds. So those seeds will be the food for those developing larvae. So that is what a mutualistic relationship between the Ecca species and the moth plant. So where both the species that moth as well as Ecca plant cannot complete their life cycle without each other. So it is a mutualistic relationship. Then you might have seen Ficus is Anjura. You heard of Anjura gottalla. So in that also you can see numerous seeds will be there. So in that plant also, Ficus plant gets pollinated by the wasp. So usually there will be place will be there. exactly in the center there will be a cavity like structure will be there. So in this region, there is an opening will be there. This wasp, that is the name of the wasp is Blastoplaga. Is the name of that wasp which helps for the pollinating this ficus plant. It is a Blastoplaga. So what happens is that it will come and lay in the eggs in the opening of this. There is a small opening is there. In that opening, cavity, that will come and lay the eggs. So similarly, then what happens later? Larvae comes out of the eggs. So this wasp species comes and deposits its egg in this opening and completely covers it. And once that seeds starts to developing, this wasp will be laid the eggs, right? So larvae will come out from the eggs. So that larvae will start to feed on these developing seeds. It's almost similar to this species itself, that is Ecca and Moss species. So here it is, plant is different. There it was Ecca plant. Here it is a ficus plant. So both these species have an interrelationship between their pollinating agents, which favors the pollination. In turn, the pollinating agent gets a place for laying eggs so that they can complete their life cycle. So flower gets pollinated by the moth, and larvae will get, developing larvae can feed on these eggs, can get food for its developing larvae. This is what the interrelationship between these flowers and with some of the biotic pollinating agents. I hope you got cleared about this. So next we will study about the fertilization. So please take down all the points. Elaborately you write by referring the textbook as well as. Okay. Now examples for this insect pollinated flowers are rose, jasmine, magnolia, sunflower. So for exams, question used to come either for 5 marks or 3 marks. This one question used to come every time. Here they used to ask what are the characteristic features of the entomophilic flowers, or what are the features of flowers which are pollinated by insects. So your answer must include the examples too. Your answer must include the examples too. So let me go with the small topic. Next, pollen pistil interaction. I will take it in the next video. So let me go with another small topic. It is artificial hybridization. So what is artificial hybridization? In which you will study about emasculation. What is emasculation? What is bagging? And what is rebagging? Again, in chapter 9, you will study about the crop improvement program. So, in plant breeding, this technique is very, very important. Artificial hybridization. So, this technique is to develop a new hybrid. To develop the new hybrid, a knowledge of this fertilization mechanism is very important. So that information comes in the pollen pistil interaction, where how a flower or a pistil can accept the pollen or it can reject the pollen. So only right type of the pollen only it can accept. So those knowledge is used by the crop breeders in the developing a new variety of crop plants. So those that comes under the artificial hybridization. So that is a technique to develop a new crop variety. So this technique involves many steps. We have to, there are 7 steps are there. Selection of a pure line, then you have to develop the pure line, then selection of the parent, development of the pure lines, then you have to check their purity as well as quality. So likewise, many steps are there. So in that technique, there is important thing to understand is that how can we produce a commercially superior variety. Okay, so before crossing any species, a crop breeder must know how can we bring the new varieties by using the superior recombinants. So first they have to select the parent, one male parent and female parent they will select, and then with selectively we have to introduce some characters in it. For example, let me take an example for sugarcane. See, sugarcane, suppose if you're going to plant a sugarcane and you are going to bring a new variety in that. So desirable characters which you choose is one of the height, right? The stem should be long, then stem should be thicker. So these two characters, okay, one plant cannot be having all these characters. So one plant having the height, tall, and another plant which is having a thick stem, those characters we have to mix up. So we have to select a female parent, then we have to go with the artificial hybridization technique. So in that, first step is emasculation. What is emasculation? Emasculation means if the female parent is bisexual. Remember, this emasculation is only in the bisexual female parent. If the female parent which you have taken is a bisexual, then only we go for this emasculation process. So emasculation means, what is emasculation process is removal of, so we'll start our answer with like that only. Okay, if the female parent bears bisexual flower, it is a mechanism actually to remove the anther actually. So if the female parent bears bisexual flower, then removal of anthers from the flower. When you have to remove, you cannot remove at any time as you like. You at your own comfortable time, the crop breeder cannot go and do this work, because this work has to be done. The removal of anther has to be done before anther dehisces. Okay, so removal of anther from the flower before the anther dehisces. Now, can you do it with your hands? Go and pull the anther and remove it. This is the mechanism. It's not scientific method. So you have to be very careful that plants should not get affected, with this mechanism of emasculation. So slowly you have to remove by using a pair of, remember, not only forceps, you must use a pair of forceps. Using a pair of forceps. Okay, so if the female parent bears bisexual flowers, then removal of anthers from the flower, you can also write flower bud, because before the maturity we can say it as a flower bud. So from the flower bud before the anther dehisces by using a pair of forceps, and this step is called as emasculation. Okay, and remember, this is done only in the bisexual flower. So question can be asked, emasculation is done in the unisexual flower, bisexual flower, or hermaphrodite flower? So right option is, it's always done only in the bisexual flower. Then after removing the anther, if you remain open that flower, what will happen? Some another undesirable pollen grains can come and pollinate it. So it should not happen. We have to, specifically we are going to pollinate with the right type of pollen. So we have to cover it. So that technique is called as bagging. Bagging is, that is, after the emasculation, the emasculated flowers has to be covered with a bag of suitable size. Usually we'll use the butter paper. Butter paper means transparent, so that it can be observed easily. So after the emasculation, please take down by yourself. After the emasculation, that is